Zinedine Zidane, world champion, symbol of national unity, and yet publicly attacked. By whom? By Marine Le Pen. Just days after being sentenced to 5 years of political ineligibility, she appears on a TV set, and that night, she decides to strike hard. Her words are clear, her targets unmistakable. In her crosshairs, Zidane, his story, his origins, his place in the Republic. What she says triggers an earthquake, but what follows is even more unexpected. Zidane initially remains silent, as always. But behind the scenes, he prepares a response. Not a clash, not an attack, but a calm, measured statement of such power that no one saw it coming. When he finally speaks, the studio falls silent. The journalist is speechless, and France listens. Because what he says that night is not just a response to Marine Le Pen. It's a message to all those silenced, all those accused of not being truly French, and all those who grew up with two cultures and one heart. You think you know the story, but stay until the end, because what Zidane says that night will shock the entire nation. The studio is bathed in white light. Marine Le Pen sits across from the journalist, upright, focused. The show is nearing its end, but before wrapping up, the interviewer asks the question everyone's waiting for. Madame Le Pen, what do you say to those who claim your conviction undermines your credibility for 2027? She offers a slight, tense smile. Those who say that are the same ones using the justice system to try to silence me. I will fight, and I believe the French are tired of moral lectures, especially from those who've never faced real hardship. Her tone is calm, but her gaze is sharp. Then, almost naturally, she continues, I think it's time we gave the floor back to real French people. Not to those who spend their time preaching from their villas in Spain or Qatar while spitting on La Marseillaise. France isn't just an image on a jersey. Its values, a history, a civilization. The journalist raises an eyebrow slightly. He senses a line has been crossed, but she presses on. You know, I respect great athletes, but some would do well to remember what France has given them before using their platform to tell us how to think. A silence settles over the room. Zidane's name isn't spoken, but everyone understands. The words are carefully chosen, but the target is crystal clear. The show ends. The journalist thanks her guest, the camera's cut off, but on social media, the machine roars to life. Clips circulate endlessly, certain phrases stand out. Villas in Qatar, spitting on La Marseillaise, not real French people. Reactions pour in. Some applaud, others are outraged. Journalists, politicians, artists, and above all, thousands of French people from immigrant backgrounds take to the platforms. They all ask the same question. Who was she talking about exactly? The answer is obvious. In one night, Marine Le Pen's words go viral. The next day, headlines scream, Marine Le Pen versus Zidane, national controversy. But Zidane says nothing. No statement, no Instagram post, nothing, just silence. And it's precisely this silence that intrigues. Those who know him understand one thing. When Zidane doesn't speak right away, he's preparing something. Since Le Pen's appearance, TV panels multiply, debates loop endlessly, as if the entire country is holding its breath, waiting for one thing, Zidane to finally speak. Clips are replayed, slowed down, dissected word by word. Political commentators seize the moment, pundits clash, and online, people divide, sometimes violently, over how to interpret the leader of the national rally's words. But amidst the frenzy, one thing stands out. Zidane stays silent. No statement, no social media post, no offhand comment to a journalist. The silence is total, and as the hours pass, it becomes heavy, almost strategic, as if it were a counter-discourse in itself. Some see it as cowardice, a fear of entering the political arena. Others, on the contrary, praise this restraint, this silent dignity that contrasts with the surrounding chaos and recalls the Zidane France has always admired. Calm, focused, in control of his own rhythm. Around him, requests flood in. People try to reach him, to shove a microphone in his face, to provoke a reaction. But Zidane, true to himself, remains untouchable, almost elusive, as he once was on the pitch. In the shadows, he observes. He watches what's said, What's repeated, what's insinuated. He receives hundreds of messages from former teammates, close friends, public figures, but also ordinary people, teachers, young people from immigrant backgrounds, parents, strangers. They all tell him the same thing, in different words but with the same emotion. You can't let this slide. Yet he continues to stay silent, not because he has nothing to say, but because he's waiting for the right moment. He knows that in a world where everything is shouted, what's said softly can have more impact. And one evening, in the quiet of his Madrid home, after long reflection, Zidane picks up the phone. He calls a journalist he knows and respects, someone discreet, reliable, far from the constant polemic. He agrees to speak, just once, not on a political panel, not in a clash, but in a sober setting, on his terms. A few days later, the announcement goes public. Zidane will speak, exceptionally, on Sunday night in a special broadcast. The nation holds its breath again, because everyone knows that when Zidane speaks, it's never for nothing. The announcement comes on a Thursday morning, almost discreetly, through a simple press release from the public channel France 2. Zinedine Zidane will speak exceptionally this Sunday at 8:45 p.m. in a special program titled France. Where are you from? Hosted by Julien Morel. Within minutes, the news spreads across all media. Notifications flood phones, headlines multiply, and the anticipation becomes national. This isn't just an interview, it's an event. Zidane rarely speaks outside of sports, so his decision to appear on television to discuss his relationship with France, his roots, his name, his face, and his silence captivates as much as it intrigues. The chosen journalist, Julien Morel, is known for his calm, rigor, and ability to let people speak without interruption or theatrics. Zidane chose him deliberately for this reason. He didn't want an interrogation, a debate, or a media circus. He wanted a space, a moment, a simple, human, almost intimate face-to-face with the entire nation. In the days leading up to the broadcast, speculation runs wild. Some in newsrooms imagine a bombshell statement, a direct condemnation, a scathing response to Marine Le Pen. Others predict a step back, a call for calm, a way to close the debate without direct confrontation. But one thing is certain, no one knows what Zidane will say. Meanwhile, he prepares, no communications team, no image strategy. He surrounds himself only with his closest, most discreet confidants, those who knew him before fame, before the spotlight. He reviews notes, excerpts from old speeches, letters he's received, memories too. This isn't about settling scores. It's about a moment of truth. Sunday approaches. In the streets, cafes, and on social media, everyone's talking about it. Even those who don't follow politics or football want to watch, because this time it's not about a match, it's about a country. At 8:45 p.m., the broadcast begins. A minimalist set, no superfluous decor, soft lighting, 2 armchairs, a journalist and Zidane, seated calm, focused. In his eyes, nothing has changed. That same blend of gentleness and strength. But in his voice tonight, there will be something else, something never heard from him before. All of France is ready to listen. The opening credits fade slowly, giving way to a warmly lit set where silence commands more presence than words. Julien Morel looks Zidane in the eyes with a mix of respect and focus, the kind journalists have when they know they're witnessing a rare moment. Zidane remains impassive, arms resting on the armrests, posture upright. He waits calmly for the first question, no apparent nervousness, as if he's always been there, as if he's never left this stance of mastering time. Julien speaks directly, with his trademark sobriety. Zinedine Zidane, thank you for accepting this invitation. You've been publicly attacked in recent days. You chose to stay silent until tonight. Why now? A brief silence settles, like a controlled breath. Zidane inhales softly, looks briefly at the floor, then raises his eyes. Because there are times when you shouldn't speak, you should listen, let people say what they have to say. And then, when the time is right, you respond, not to defend yourself, but to remind people who you are, what you've lived, what you stand for. His voice is calm, measured, but each word is precise, like a perfectly placed shot. No excessive force, but full of impact. Julian proceeds cautiously. You were targeted, directly or indirectly, by Marine Le Pen. She spoke of French icons living abroad, not singing La Marseillaise, forgetting what France gave them. She was clearly referring to you. What do you say to that? Zidane doesn't look away. He doesn't smile. He doesn't get angry. He pauses briefly, then responds with the same tranquility. I'm not going to judge anyone. Not Madame Le Pen. Not anyone else. Everyone says what's in their heart, and so do I. But I think there's a way to talk about France without hurting those who love it differently. He pauses. The camera stays fixed. The studio is frozen. I grew up in Marseille, in a simple neighborhood, with people from all over. We didn't have much, but we had one thing in common. We were proud to be here, to be in France. We didn't shout it. We lived it. Julian stays silent. He senses something opening. Zidane continues, more slowly. People often talk about those who take advantage of France, but they rarely mention those who broke their backs for her. Those who stayed quiet, worked hard, carried this country without ever asking for a medal. This is no longer an interview. It's a public confession, and it's only the beginning. Zidane adjusts his position slightly in the chair, never losing that characteristic calm, the one he had on the pitch before a penalty. The silence in which he raps each word makes it hit harder than any shout. The journalist doesn't interrupt. He senses this is no longer just a media segment. It's a suspended moment. I heard what was said, of course, Zidane resumes. I read, I watched. And I could get angry, respond with wounded pride, but that wouldn't help. I have nothing to prove. Not to her, not to anyone. He leans forward slightly, hands clasped. What I'm going to say, I'm not saying to defend myself. I'm saying it for my people, for everyone like me, everyone born here, raised here, who loves this country and is sometimes told they're not really French. His voice remains soft, but emotion flickers in his eyes. My father came to France in the 1950s from a small village in Algeria. He had nothing but a simple dream, to give his children a better life. He worked his whole life. He never complained. He never got recognition. He just built in silence. Zidane pauses. His gaze hardens now. And today, someone to make it seem like people like him betrayed France, that they don't love it, that they don't belong. He straightens up. His tone remains calm, but his words carry new weight. I was born in Marseille. I played for France. I won for France. I sang La Marseillaise in my own way. Not always with my lips, but always with my heart. A shiver runs through the studio. I never use France. I serve her with my feet, yes, but also with my mind, with respect, with silence sometimes. And if that's not enough to be considered French, then maybe we should ask what that word even means anymore. The journalist doesn't move. The studio is still. Zidane lowers his voice slightly, as if speaking to someone specific. I don't need anyone to grant me a place. I earned it through work, through effort. And if one day my children or grandchildren still have to justify their place here, then we've failed as a nation. A dense silence settles, one no one dares break. The response is delivered, not in tone, not in anger, but in a simple, unassailable truth. Zidane stays silent for a few seconds, as if choosing his words even more carefully. Then, in that same measured tone, he continues, When I was a kid, I didn't know what immigration was. I just knew my father spoke a different language than my teacher, that my mother put cumin in her dishes, and that some homes smelled of tagine, others of cabbage soup. He smiles briefly. That was my France. A mix, a noise, a smell, a pride. We lived side by side, sometimes with tensions, but with respect because we knew we were struggling together. He leans forward slightly, hands clasped. I didn't learn about immigration through statistics or debates. I lived it at the table in the streets at school. I saw it in my father's tired eyes when he came home from construction, in my mother's worn hands after cleaning offices where she wasn't allowed to sit. The journalist says nothing, hanging on every word. What they call immigration, as if it's a mass, a danger, a problem. It's people, stories, sacrifices, and sometimes a silence that speaks volumes. Those people didn't take everything. They gave everything. He pauses, then continues more slowly. My father was never invited to a TV set. My mother never got a tribute. But it's them, and millions like them, who kept this country running, who carried it, cleaned it, built it, often without ever complaining. Zidane stops for a moment, as if struck by a thought. When I lifted the World Cup in 1998, I did it with the blue jersey on my shoulders, but with all of that in my heart, with that childhood, that neighborhood, that father, that mother, that story, that France. His voice grows heavier. So when someone tells me today that I don't embody the real France, that I'm a product of immigration, as if it's a stain, a flaw to hide, I think some people have forgotten what it really means to be French. He looks up at the camera, not seeking effect, just saying what he thinks. Being French isn't a piece of paper, a color, a last name. It's a way of living, respecting, passing something on. And we learned that in families from elsewhere, too. A silence settles. Not heavy, but profound. Julia Morel has nothing to add. And for good reason. Zidane has just said what no one dares to articulate. At the end of his words, Zidane doesn't move. He sits there, gaze steady, calm. Around him, it's as if time has stopped. Julia Morel, despite his experience with live broadcasts and powerful testimonies, stays frozen for a few seconds, unable to continue. He opens his mouth slightly, but no words come. He lowers his eyes, as if he, too, has been struck by an invisible blow. On the set, the crew doesn't move. No one coughs, no one breathes loudly. The lighting continues to softly envelop the two men, but the atmosphere has shifted. This is no longer an interview, not even a response. It's a suspended moment, one of those rare, unwritten, unplanned moments. Zidane seems at ease, not out of vanity, but because he knows he's said what he needed to directly, without theatrics, without anger, and above all, without trying to convince. He didn't shout, he didn't insult, he spoke. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing. Julian finally lifts his head slightly and asks a simple question, almost whispered. Did you hesitate to come here tonight? Zidane replies without hesitation, no. I just waited for the right moment. Not to defend myself, but to say what many people think and no one listens to. The journalist nods slowly, then murmurs, almost to himself, I think you just did. In the control room, the producers let the silence linger. They understand it shouldn't be broken too quickly. On social media, reactions start pouring in, but here, on this set, nothing else matters yet. The world can comment later. For now, a truth has been spoken, and it lingers like a scent of justice in a room too long sealed. The credits approach. Julian Morel glances at the timer. A few minutes of airtime remain, but he doesn't want to fill them with platitudes. He knows Zidane's words must stand alone, untouched. So he concludes with a simple, almost solemn sentence. Thank you for coming. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for letting this silence touch us. Zidane nods. Then, without another word, he stands. The camera follows him briefly as he walks away calmly, shoulders straight, as always. And in that silence, all of France remains seated, breathless. The next morning, France wakes up with a strange taste in its throat, as if something significant has happened, but no one knows how to name it yet. There was no clash, no scandal, no violent image, just a man who spoke and the silence that followed. Yet social media is ablaze. Clips rack up millions of views in hours. But what stands out isn't just the numbers, it's the nature of the reactions. No polemic, no brutal divide, no war between camps. Instead, there's an immense respect, almost a sense of relief, as if someone finally said, in simple words, what so many felt but never dared express. On Twitter, young people from working-class neighborhoods share clips of the interview with simple captions. Thank you. We saw ourselves. This is our France. Teachers share the part where Zidane talks about his parents. Nurses, garbage collectors, caregivers share their own stories. They say they cried, that for the first time in a long time, they felt seen. In some newspapers, even the most skeptical columnists praise the clarity of a man who never sought attention but earns it with every word. At the National Assembly, several MPs reference Zidane's speech in session. A deputy from the suburbs declares, "When a man like him still has to justify his belonging to France, something's seriously wrong." Even on the right, some tread carefully. A conservative senator tweets, "You can disagree with Zidane, but you can't ignore what he represents." Marine Le Pen stays silent. No official response. Some of her supporters call it a staged moment, but public opinion has already shifted. In schools, teachers play the clip. In families, people watch it at the dinner table. In neighborhoods, rural areas, offices, and workshops, people talk about it calmly, with emotion, because that night Zidane didn't just speak for himself. He spoke for thousands of others. The invisible, the forgotten, the silent French who were never heard except when they score a goal. And this time there was no ball, but there was a goal. A massive one, straight to the heart. Days passed since the broadcast. The media storm calms, but something lingers. An echo, a trace, as if Zidane's words continue to resonate in the streets, in minds, in the silences of daily life. He hasn't spoken since. No tweets, no follow-ups, nothing. And that might be his greatest strength, knowing when to stay silent so his words can keep living. In a small primary school in Saint-Denis, a teacher plays a clip of the interview to her 5th grade class. The students listen, arms folded on their desks. At the end, a boy raises his hand and asks, "Madam, Zidane's a real French person, right?" She smiles. "Yes, and so are you." In the suburbs, in the countryside, in families, people speak differently now. They no longer say he, they say we. They no longer say over there, they say here. Zidane hasn't changed the laws, but he's reopened a space, one where everyone can finally say, "I belong to this country, even if I don't always look like it." And what he offered that night was a kind of permission, the permission to exist without apologizing, to be French without conditions. A journalist publishes a column the next day in a major newspaper. Its title is simple: Zidane didn't shout. He built. A few days later, in a short video posted on his social media, Zidane appears briefly. No interview, no speech, just him standing in a black sweater against a plain white wall. He looks at the camera and says, in a clear, steady voice, "I didn't inherit France through blood. I earned it through heart, sweat, and a bit of football." A faint smile, a sincere look, and the screen goes black. Within 24 hours, that sentence is shared millions of times. It's written on walls, on T-shirts, in messages. It no longer belongs to Zidane. It belongs to the people, not to one group against another, but to all those who ever doubted their place here. And thanks to him, that night they doubt no more. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications. I also recommend checking out one of the stories displayed on the screen. You'll love it, I promise.